Hey everybody, David R. Becker here with BeckerArt. And today I want to talk to you about what to mount your watercolor paper to. I've been waxing my work and I've been waxing the paper, and I tell everybody, hey, you got to mount it first, mount your paper first onto a board so that it's on a standard size board panel, and so that you can just go ahead and then frame it just like that with that standard size panel, and it's going to be mounted on there. And what do you glue it on with? There's about 4 glues that I use. The one that I most used recently is Mod Podge. And so Mod Podge is a white glue kind of thing, and it's water-based, acid-free, and you can put this on the panel and on the paper, put something on top of it to weigh it down, and just leave it there, and let it dry overnight, and you'll have it glued down. Now, that is one of the things, and you can also use, this is a pH neutral adhesive that bookmakers use, the book binders they use for making their books cover and stuff, and it's pH balanced, so it's acid free. So that's another one you can use, and all these will be in the description of the video. So that's one of the glues. Then there's acrylic medium gel, or gel medium, that Holbein makes. Actually, there's a lot of acrylic companies that make acrylic gel. It's like a medium, the medium, acrylic medium. So that's the 3. And then there's the one that I just found out about. I didn't order it yet. I just found out about it. It's called Yes Paste. Basically what it says, Yes Paste. And again, that'll be in the description. And it's paste. It's thicker, and you use it as a paste to put on your board and then glue your paper right on top of that. All right, so those are about four glues that you could use, and I'm sure there's many more, but I would say just use one of those 4 just to glue it down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to show you what kind of boards you can glue them to, because that's what I get. The biggest question I get from everybody is like, what do you use, David? What do you use to glue your paper to? And so there's about 11 of these panels that I'm going to show you that I glue it to. One is Masonite, and this is an ampersand panel, and so does Ampersand makes a watercolor panel, and they just put paint, and this is an ampersand panel. They just put paint on the one side, but you can also glue your paper to the Masonite. And they make things called cradle boards, and the cradle panel, where they take Masonite and they put a little strip of wood all the way around the Masonite, and so what that does is it makes it thick, and so you can just use that as sort of like the way you don't have to use a frame, basically, because it's thick, and you hang it on a wall with about 1 inch, sometimes 2 inches of the side panel, and so that's for probably a more modern look. But you can just take your paper, glue it to that, and then trim it out, and that's another way of being able to hang it on a wall without a frame at all. And so that's a cradle board Masonite. So one of the things you can use, and it's 1/8 of an inch thick. They also make 1/4 of an inch. It's going to get really heavy when you start using 1/4 of an inch. And this is pretty sturdy. It's not going to bend too much. Sometimes if things get humid or wet, it can kind of buckle a little bit. Then there's hardboard. Hardboard is kind of like Masonite, where the one side is really slick and the other side is kind of rough. So this is hardboard, not Masonite. And I also put paint on top of that. I use the absorbent ground and put that on top of the board, just so I can paint right on there without any paper whatsoever. You can do that with the Masonite too, but I'd like to get some paper. I'm actually telling you today only about the paper, gluing that to a board. So hardboard, Masonite, and you can get all these. I'm gonna put all that in the description. I'm gonna put links to. You can actually buy hardboards like this and Masonite for artists on Amazon. But the art stores also sell them, like also the plywood. They also sell pieces of wood that's a certain size, 1/8 inch thick, 1/4 of an inch. And again, like I said, they do sell them at art stores, or you can go right to the like Home Depot or Menards and just have them. They will cut it for you, like a bigger sheet down to a smaller sheet at Home Depot, not at Menards, but you can get them pretty inexpensive. And Home Depot will cut it for you, so you're not buying them expensive. If you do buy them from like Amazon or some of the art stores, they are a little bit more expensive because they're cutting it for you and wrapping it up, and they're making sure that the plywood is pretty nicely even. And so this one has a little line through there, so that may affect the paper depending on how thick your paper is. If it's really thin paper, you're going to see that's going to become in part of the paper. So I would probably use this side, and that's a little bit more even. But this is a board that's just I found, and so it's like I could glue it like a 300-pound on that, and you're not going to see that. All right, so that's plywood. Next one is a chipboard. So the backing of a canvas block or a paper block, like a pad of paper, you know, what they use in the back of the pad of paper or the blocks that have watercolor paper in them. This is the backing board. They're called either backer boards or chipboards, and it's basically a kind of really thick board that they use on the back of. See, this is on the back of one of the Legion pads of watercolor paper, and so it's pretty thick and it's pretty durable. So use that to glue your paper down to. Chipboard, backer board. Next one I've got is acid-free mat board. Now, mat board doesn't come very thick unless you buy the thicker stuff, and for that, that's going to be pretty expensive. Like an acid-free mat board that's kind of thick is pretty expensive. So I would suggest some of these other ones. Though, if you have something laying around or something that was all marked up and you can't use as a mat board, mount your watercolor paper onto it. A lot of these boards you can use, you know, like you can use either just by painting them or mount it. And if something goes wrong with your mat board or you put there's a scratch on it, you can't get out of there, well then just glue down a piece of paper on top of it. We need something to back the paper up. And also it depends on if you're using 140-pound paper or if you're using 300-pound paper, because 300-pound paper doesn't need much of a backing, so you can use a thinner backing. Where 140 and 60 or 90-pound, that will need a pretty thick backing board, so it stays into the frame. Now a canvas panel, this is I never even thought about that, but you know, the canvas panels you can buy like at Hobby Lobby, you can go to even Walmart, and that's where I bought this one. And it's just a canvas panel. It's already gessoed, and so how about if I just put a sheet of paper over that, you know, and glue it on there? They're pretty inexpensive. You know, it's not, I know it's probably got a chipboard inside here. Inside there is probably a chipboard like you see there, and just wrap with a canvas. But then you can just go ahead and glue a paper onto a canvas panel. That's another thing. Illustration board. Crescent makes an illustration board. They also make a watercolor board that you don't have to glue anything to and just use. And that's another thing. If you want to buy them just with paper on them already, panels, watercolor panels, you can buy that with paper on it. Some people, like ampersand, doesn't put paper on there. They just put a paint on there, absorbent ground. But illustration board is, if you have some laying around, it's a good thing to put. This is a crescent illustration board. And so you can just put it right on the front. And now if you want to use illustration board just to paint on, that's acts more like a Yupo. It doesn't really absorb like a watercolor paper. So it's a little bit different, and it's pretty slick. And so illustration board is another thing you can use. Gator board is like foam core board. And but it's got layers. The foam core is in between two kind of sturdy layers. Two sturdy layers in between is the foam core, the foam, and then they got two nice panels on the top and bottom. And so that's kind of neat. This one's a thick one. This is about a ½ inch one, but pretty thick board. So glue it onto there. I don't recommend as much because it will probably dent a little bit. But hey, a lot of times you're doing it afterwards, and you're just gluing it on something that needs to be sturdy, and it is definitely sturdy. Gator board. Now this is a new thing that I found, and I know a lot of people are actually painting on PVC sheets, and what that is polypropylene sheets, basically plastic. It's plastic sheeting, and this one's about 1/8 of an inch. This one looks more like maybe 1/4 of an inch almost. So it's just basically, I found this as ceiling tile at Menards. Now I know they sell it on Amazon, and I know a couple of artists that work actually on and just paint right on top of a PVC panel, and they just like the oil painters and stuff. But you can also mount your watercolor paper to it, and I have mounted it already onto this PVC panel. Like all these panels may bend a little bit, but not enough that it's going to hurt it, because once you put it into the frame, then you just staple it in there, and it usually comes out nice and flat. So no worries about it bending too much. So PVC sheet, that's another thing. And the last two is, let me just talk about the Plexiglass first. So the Plexiglass is something I never thought about, you know, and a lot of times I get scratched up Plexiglass that I use for when I'm painting. I use the paper and just tape it to the Plexiglass. But this you can actually glue your paper onto. It's Plexiglass, just glue it on. And you may want to like scratch the surface a little bit with maybe some sandpaper, just so that the glue has something to hold on to. But you know, put it on there, and I've seen people use it already, and it was just a lady who would just give a demonstration, and she paints right on the Plexiglass and puts the absorbent ground right on there, the absorbent gesso ground that she puts right onto there, and just paints right in there into the medium. So it's probably better to do it with acrylic, but you can take the acrylic gel, put it down, and glue your paper to the plexiglass too. All right, the last one I found was aluminum panel. Now, finding an aluminum panel is probably pretty hard to do though, like finding a inexpensive aluminum panel. But if there's something laying around or something and it's pretty thick, this is about 1/8 of an inch thick. And this is actually what Legion Papers is going to start putting their paper, gluing their papers to. This is a sheet of their black paper, and they're going to put it onto the aluminum panel. And so you buy it already glued down. So it's probably going to cost you a little bit more than if you do it yourself. But, you know, where are you going to get aluminum panel? This is nice. This is very, very cool. I can't wait to get mine. I already put my order in and see how shiny it is. It's shining my light right there. But so that's one of the things you can do. Again, all these are things you hopefully can find somewhere, or maybe you see something at Goodwill or something, or you have no contractor and he happens to have a bunch of something. Like my neighbor he works for a company, and their pallets always have these plywood, very thin plywood sheets around them, taped around. And so he gives them to me. And so if there's something you can find like that, that's perfect. Plexiglass. Maybe you have a glass store and then you have a lot of scratched up plexiglass. Well, plexiglass, you don't have to worry about it being scratched up because you're going to be gluing a piece of paper on top of it anyways. So find some way of finding one of these kind of 11 sheets or panels. And so here's a list of them. So here's a list of the 11 panels. And I'll leave it up there, and so you can go through that. And again, those are about the 11 things you can possibly paint. And there may be more. I was trying to look for as many as I could, and those are the ones I've actually used. Some of these, and some of them, like the aluminum panel, I didn't find anything like that. But I know that Legion is going to be putting their papers on aluminum, gluing them to the aluminum panels. So start doing them. And also, one thing, most importantly, is make sure that these panels are standard sizes before you glue your paper to the panels. If you want to make sure that when you don't have the custom frame, you want standard size frames that you can just put these into, and then you can wax them and put them right into your frame, and they'll look great, and you'll get a lot more money for your paintings when you sell them. All right, so those are 11 panels. Go ahead and start gluing down your paper to those panels. And also, somebody asked me, well, when you glue it down, what do you do after you glue it down? Well, you put a bunch of encyclopedias that you still have hanging around, or very big heavy weights on top of the, and actually cover your paper. Make sure you don't ruin your paper by putting maybe a clean sheet of plexiglass or something, so you can put a bunch of books on top of that and just let it be sitting on top of there until it dries, and then just protect it, and then you'll have it ready for a frame, and it won't have to have any custom framing anymore. All right, so, and then you do the waxing I talked about last week. All right, so those are 11 panels. I'll see you on Thursday. This week we're going to be painting a painting that Sargent did. It's a boat scene that Sargent had done. I was going to do something else, but I'm going to save that for next week. So this week it's about copying a master. And then if you have time, glue down a piece of paper onto one of these panels, and then you'll be able to put it right into a frame and sell it right away. All right, we'll see you later. Thanks. Bye-bye.